Hey guys, I hope you're doing well tonight. I'm going to read a book, well, not the whole thing, mind you, a story from the most bizarre true crime stories ever told. So, a huge trigger warning. If you've ever seen The Silence of the Lambs and Buffalo Bill, you will know what I'm talking about. Skin suit and all. I'm sorry I woke you up. So, this story is called Katarzyna, Zowada, and the Buffalo Bill Murderer. The horror film The Silence of the Lambs, a murderer, nicknamed Buffalo Bill, kidnaps women, starves them in a pit until their skin is loose, then removes their flesh and wears it as a costume. I can't. Wow. Have you guys ever heard of Ed Gein? Yeah. So like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Buffalo Bill and the Silence of the Lambs and Psycho and Bates Motel, that's all on this guy. Though the character was partly inspired by real-life criminal Ed Gein, who fashioned lampshades and face masks out of skin, Gein got most of his materials from robbing graves, not capturing and torturing people. The Buffalo Bill skin suit remained a thing of legend. That is until 1998. Katarzyna was a student at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. She had a hard few years struggling with depression since her father died. She felt she was responsible for his death. She had insisted the two go on a hike together where he had fallen and suffered a spinal injury. That later killed him. Katarzyna felt a great amount of guilt about this and freely agreed to go to counseling. She seemed to have a difficult time finding her path in life. She initially studied psychology, then switched to history, and finally settled on religious studies. Her classmates say her attendance was a little spotty, and that she was a shy, reserved person who they didn't really know much about. While her school attendance may have been inconsistent, her therapy attendance was not. She dutifully showed up to every session, eager to find some relief from her guilt and sadness. On November 12th, 1998, her mother waited for her outside the psychiatric clinic in the Zowada neighborhood of Krakow, where Katarzyna had a 6 p.m. therapy appointment. She never arrived. Her mother started calling around to family and friends, but nobody had seen her. She went to the police, but was told that because of her depressed state of mind, it was likely that she was out partying with friends or that she had run away, as many depressed young women do. Despite her insistence that her daughter wouldn't do that, Katarzyna's mother was told she couldn't file a missing persons report until she had been missing for 24 hours. When the investigation did begin, it didn't turn up many leads. Police noted that she had been attempting to change her appearance over the few months before her disappearance. She had dyed her hair blonde and had lost some weight. Classmates said her attendance had been dropping even further, leading police to believe that Katarzyna had met someone recently and had been having a secret relationship with them, though they had no leads as to who this person might be. CCTV footage from her usual hangout with sports didn't catch any glimpse of her. On January 6, 1999, a tugboat called the Elk got something stuck in its propeller while sailing on the Vistula River. The boat workers thought it was some sort of a giant rubber band of leathery material. It was actually a much more horrifying item. As the workers looked closer, they saw that it was human remains that had been fashioned into a skin suit. Oh my god, that's what this photo is here, guys. DNA tests confirmed that it was the body of Katarzyna. The river was dredged and some of Katarzyna's clothes and her right leg were found, though the rest of her body was still missing. Because of the precision of the butchery and the fact that her flesh had been fashioned into a suit intended for someone to wear, police deduced that the killer was likely a butcher, a surgeon, or a hunter, and was probably close to the same size as her. They were probably an intelligent killer who chose his victims ahead of time and likely stalked them rather than a frenzied opportunist person who killed whoever they could find. Other than that, the police had no solid leads. In May 1999, police received a call from a distressed elderly man saying he thought his grandson had killed someone. The elderly man, who had a very poor eyesight, said he felt something was strange about his grandson's appearance. When police arrived at the home where the caller was living with his son and grandson, they found a gruesome scene. The corpse of the caller's 50-year-old son was hanging upside down from the rafters. It had been skinned, and the caller's grandson was wearing his father's face as a mask and was dressed in his clothes. What in the actual fuck? Police identified the killer as Vladimir W. He was arrested for the murder of his father and seemed like a good lead in the case of Katarzyna. After all, how many killers interested in skinning their victims and using their flesh to dress up as them could there possibly be in Poland at one time? It turned out that Vladimir and Katarzyna both went to the same university and had both studied psychology at one point, but there was no concrete evidence that they had ever met, and nothing else linking Vladimir to Katarzyna's murder. But Vladimir insisted he knew nothing of her, and was deported to his native Russia to serve a 25-year sentence for his crimes against his father. Vladimir was the first and only solid lead the detectives were to get for 2 decades. In 2012, thanks to more sophisticated DNA testing and modeling, investigators were able to create a 3D model of Katarzyna's body before she was skinned. I can't believe that. They also determined some extremely disturbing details about the last moments of her life. Katarzyna had been chained up by her ankles. Trigger warning, guys, I'm sorry. Beaten and tortured for weeks before she died. She most likely had a shattered pelvis from multiple beatings with a heavy object. Worst of all, she was probably skinned alive before being dismembered and having her flesh fashioned into the skin suit that was found in the river. Wow, this is crazy. There was also evidence that she was AR'd after her death. Because of some of the marks found on her body, the authorities added that the perpetrator may have been trained in martial arts to their criminal profile. In 2017, the police received a letter which led to their next big lead. It had come from a friend of a man named Robert Zankweski, who had been becoming increasingly suspicious of Zanisowski's interest in Katarzyna's case. The letter said he had visited her grave several times and didn't live far from the river where her remains were found. He had already been on the police radar. They had been staking out Katarzyna's grave to look for any suspicious people who may want to revisit their victim and had noticed that he came a lot. He also perfectly fit the description of the killer made by criminal profilers. Apparently, when Jasowski was younger, he had enjoyed torturing and unaliving small animals. He was very antisocial as a child and was called a freak and a weirdo by his classmates. He was trained in martial arts. He had worked in the morgue of the military hospital when he was in the army, and later worked in a lab at the Institute of Zoology and Biomedical Research at the Jagiellonian University, where animal testing was being done. He was fired from that position for killing all the rabbits in the lab. Bastard. Zankweski was also a peeping Tom and a known harasser of women. Investigators tore his apartment apart and found blood and hair in his drains and under appliances in his bathroom that matched Katarzyna's. Robert was arrested and charged with aggravated murder with particular cruelty, though not much is known about what happened next. The authorities requested a closed trial and have not released much information. In 2018, Robert made a complaint that he was being harassed by the guards in prison. It was briefly looked into, though nothing came of that investigation. He remains in prison. The rest of Katarzyna's body was never found.